All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen. This is sponsored by Seller Labs, one of the foremost tools out there in the world for new Amazon sellers. And we've been around for a long time. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. Great to be here. Nice to meet you, Will.
Nice to meet you as well. All right, so Tyler, why would an e-commerce seller who's looking to scale, who's looking to grow, who's looking to monetize their mental capital as well, why would they be interested in hearing from you?
That's a great question. I think when I look back at my career, the things that bluntly I've fallen into, I think I've taken distinct advantage of opportunities that come your way and not letting them go by you. Whether that was my job at Apple, where I literally got the job by writing a song, or started an e-commerce agency that grew to $300 million in management in less than 5 years. These are opportunities that have oftentimes come my way through openness, excitement, and relationships. So I think if somebody is looking to monetize those aspects of their career, I can help.
So I have to ask about the song. You landed the job at Apple by writing a song.
Yes, I did. It may still exist in the wilds of the internet somewhere. But long story short, I graduated high school early and went to college and hated it. So I dropped out. My parents gave me the option. They're like, listen, you can pay for college or you can pay for rent. So I said, listen, I'm going to pay for rent, just not to you. So I moved out for a couple years. Then when I decided to finally get back into college, I moved back in with them. And so I went to Fullerton College in Southern California, and I had an English teacher. His name was Miguel Powers. And at that point in my life, I was playing music. I had friends. I'd grown up playing music in the church. I was playing bars and things around Southern California, and it was part of my identity was playing music. And in my office upstairs, I have music instruments in my background. But in that class, he gave us an extracurricular and said, "Hey, help somebody else stand the MLA, which is how you format English papers." And so I decided with a friend of mine in the class to write a song about the MLA. Unbeknownst to me, he then turned that into a speech he gave in Alabama that representatives of Apple Education were in the audience who were hyper focused on using peer generated content to sell laptops to college kids. Fast forward 2 to 3 months later, I sold my song to Apple and they offered me a job to be a rep on campus at Fullerton College to help them sell Apple products to other kids, in an effort to A, have fun and B, do something I was passionate about. I found myself in an opportunity where a gentleman named Jeff Monday offered me my first job with Apple. And so that's how I got my job playing a song.
I man, so many levels of I that's honestly I think the first time that I've ever heard of anyone landing. So I've done crazy things to land jobs. I Vemno requested my boss for $90,000 before he became my boss because I was like the best. This is the best 90 grand you'll ever spend. Like just 3x this over the next year. This was several years ago, and that got his attention. He
Yeah.
definitely interviewed me, and I got the job. And
Love
I'd
it.
heard about that from like my mom or my wife was saying something about it to somebody, or I was like, oh, I'm
Mm.
going to do that next time I'm looking. And sure enough, there I was looking, and I was like, all right, I got this. I know how to get this guy's attention, but I've
Mhm.
never like a song. That's pretty solid.
Thanks, man. Honestly, it was unexpected, and that's what I find is unique about my career is unexpected things have oftentimes come my way, and I've been very fortunate to see them when they're there in front of me and say yes. I was raised by my dad, who often told me to say yes to things and believe that there were doors that would open for you. And when you walk around in life believing those kinds of things are going to come your way and will exist, you start to see the opportunities a lot more. Some of the best things I have ever done in my career have been facilitated in some shape or fashion by the universe to say, hey, this is an opportunity, and it's my job to say yes or no to it. And the things that I pushed so deeply into that were difficult and bang my head against the wall and those kind of things tended to be the worst things I'd ever done. So I don't know if the takeaway here is path of least resistance, but I think part of it is understanding what you care about and what you're passionate about that help you find that pathway. whether it's hard or easy, through to the places that you're meant to be.
Interesting. So the rule of thumb there, it feels like as you're going through life is I'm not take the path of least resistance, but
No.
it is important to recognize when you're hanging your head on a brick wall that's really not going to move.
That could be true. Walked away with my fair share of scars in terms of chasing down customers, building things, and being disappointed in the outcomes because either I put so much into them I didn't squeeze it back out, or my expectations were outweighed versus the reality of the situation. And so oftentimes what I found and I could tell story after story of startup or job that has opened doors for me, but it really comes down to this concept of preparedness. Father, he passed away about 2 years ago. And I've reflected for the last number of years on the tools that he left me, right? My father was very much, especially early on, a blue class collar worker, electrician, worked nights just to make ends meet, two jobs kind of thing. So we were a young middle class family, as my mom likes to say. We were mac and cheese poor. And you don't recognize those things when you're a kid, but I never actually even gave my father the credit until much later in life that he was actually the first entrepreneur that I ever knew.
Mm.
I always just saw him as the gentleman that worked late and took me to go electrocute myself at 14 years old, right? And so for me, it was one of those things like didn't click early on that my father was an entrepreneur. I went and I chased people that I'd met in the
Mm.
church, and I worked for people at a number of different startups and garages and doing programming and a lot of things. But I come back to this concept is that what we as individuals have, Will, is a toolbox at our disposal. And these are the skills. They're these items we carry around, little things we might pick up, tips and tricks that we might pick up, things we work really freaking hard to understand and grow into, whether that's a college degree, a certification, 10 years doing the same thing. Those are all tools that sit in our toolbox. And oftentimes, tools are there to be used in the moments that they're needed. And you don't know you need them until you get to that moment. And so, my intrinsic belief is that it's incumbent on us as individuals to continue to add tools to our toolbox for the instance that they're needed. And I've been very fortunate that as a young man, my mother and my father gave me a lot of tools that I could have at my disposal. And they've served me well. And I've continued that methodology throughout my career that preparedness oftentimes meets opportunity.
Interesting. Interesting. So, when's the first time you can remember monetizing mental capital?
When you're young, you do things because you just need the money, right? You're young, you're like, hey, I remember, I think I was at my friend Brady's house. I always had friends that were slightly older than me. I graduated high school at 17. A lot of my friends were part of church groups and those kind of things when I was younger. And I was at Brady's house, and somebody else was there, a guy named Sasha, who I had known. Sasha's father had a bankrupted dental production company, right? And Sasha was like, I'm going to buy him out for it, and I'm going to restart the thing, right? And out of nowhere, without actually thinking about it, it's like, I can help you set up shipping, right? I had never set up shipping before, right? I didn't know how to organize a warehouse that was at that point a garage, not a warehouse, right? But he needed people. I needed money. And so my skill was I had time, I could fold boxes, and I could push myself into supporting him who definitely needed the support. As he said, hey, I'm going to restart my dad's bankrupt dental production company, which is now one of the premier dental production companies called Harvest Dental, based in Southern California. And so my first time really monetizing my capital actually wasn't my mental capital. It was seeing the opportunity and saying, I need something. How can I add value to this other person? And so oftentimes what I found myself doing is seeing opportunity and saying, how can I add value? Can I glean something from that? And I continued to associate myself with entrepreneur and founder and CEO, whoever, to learn from them, to gain some value that I could then take away and then continue to increase my network over that time. So my first experience was probably with Sasha in a garage somewhere in Pomona.
I can set up shipping. How often do we as entrepreneurs say, "Oh, I can do that," and then it's like frantic googling or to figure out, okay, how does this actually work?
I am 90% sure I didn't have a cell phone when that happens. So the concept of Google wasn't my first thought. It was like, I'm pretty sure I can fix this. Pretty
I'm pretty sure I
sure.
can figure this out.
You know what? And I think that's maybe part of entrepreneurship. And I don't know if this is going to be a great takeaway for all the listeners, but you know what? You just go and figure it out.
Go
Right?
figure it out.
Cousin Josh in the agency that we worked on together. That was one of the core tenets. Hashtag figure it out. You know,
Gosh.
type of tenacity is hard to come by, right? But oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we wear different hats. You know, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Actually, so the one of the things that I do outside of run this podcast and several other, sorts of exciting things fractional is I actually run a talent network where I specifically look for that attribute, the go figure it out
Mm,
attribute.
love it.
And I clone entrepreneurs with that talent network because it is like it's like the X factor with a lot of entrepreneurs is like there isn't anybody else to figure it out. So you got to go just figure it out.
Yes.
And it's crazy how important it is to have that, businesses begin to grow and, the unknown that comes with all of that.
It's quite true. You know, so when you think about how that even plays its role in monetizing mental capital, sometimes you have to be very comfortable in saying you don't know
Yep.
and let that not be the gut punch,
Yep.
right? That tells you you're a failure, or the gut punch that tells you you don't know how to go do something. But the tenacity go and get it done, right? Is
I was surprised by how many people were totally comfortable with me saying I didn't know, and they didn't immediately fire me. I was like, oh, I thought if I didn't know something, you were going to immediately cancel your contract with me or whatever. But it was interesting how that kind of shifted and grew over time, and I
Mm,
didn't need to be perfect at it all to get it
mm,
figured out, and people were comfortable with me figuring it out. Like I don't know how to do
mm.
that, but I'm going to figure it out for you, and that was
Yeah.
sufficient often for my clients.
You know, an adjacency to that, so something to expand on that concept, Will. So I managed a lot of people in my time. And anybody worth their salt in HR will tell you when somebody leaves an organization, they oftentimes don't leave an organization, they leave a leader, they leave a manager, right? It
Agreed.
is often the case.
Agreed.
And the value of people oftentimes gets overwritten because job descriptions are so heavily burdened towards skill set, task output that we're looking for from that individual, right? But when you think about being an entrepreneur, an individual contributor, a consultant, somebody in that space, the ability for somebody, an individual, to then trust and have confidence in another individual has some aspect of saying, hey, I trust your skill set enough to build a relationship, to engage in those types of people. But the ones that go farther are the ones that build trust. And the ones that have trust generally are honest with themselves, have a great way of setting expectations with their customers and with their clients that allows them to say those things, right? I don't know how to do what you're asking me to do, but I'm going to go figure it out. And that
I like
type
that.
of skill set tends to be invaluable from my perspective because now I don't have to sit here as a consultant or as a founder and say, I know everything, right? Because the second you say that, we all go, bullshit. You can smell it a mile
Yeah.
away. You knew everything. Why aren't you successful? You knew everything. Why are you stuck here doing this, right?
Hmm.
And it gives us this opportunity to be honest with ourselves, the people around us. And man, that just creates a happier life. It really does at the end of the day.
Okay. Question here, digging into some of these nuggets.
All right.
What, as you kind of this journey of yours and the toolbox that you've added things to and these monetizable nuggets, how do you find those? And in any monetizable nuggets you'd be interested in sharing with the listeners?
When I think about monetizable nuggets and like where they stem from and where they come from, I can't say there's like source of a nugget, right? In my mind, like my creative brain goes to this panhandler trying to find gold in a river, right? If it was easy to find, we'd all go and find it, right? And that's the beauty of a nugget is like so we don't see it until it's there and it's been there and it's so relevant and so shiny in our face that we realize it exists, right? I actually relate it a lot back to this concept of creativity, right? I think the author of, I believe it was Eat, Pray, Love, used this example in a TED talk talking about creativity is like creativity comes at us like a train flying over the horizon, and it's our job to be ready to catch it, right, at any point in time. And so when I think about nuggets, they're similar to me in that sense is like we have to be prepared to find the gold, to find the thing that is unique and different and intriguing at any point in our journey as an employee, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father. Because what I've found consistently is that as I open up, I do a lot of consulting as an example for brands and for agencies. And as I got to dive deeper into brands and deeper into agencies to help them scale and build their business on e-commerce, oftentimes the insights that I bring to the table might have nothing to do with our industry in furniture, as an example, or consumer electronics or Amazon, right? But that allows for me to bring unique perspective and unique value into it. So with nuggets, as they live in terms of being able to find them, I
Mm,
think awareness is key. You have to be consciously open and available to those nuggets as they come in, whether that's going to come out of an article that I'm reading, a conversation, a podcast, etc. How do you monetize them? That's a whole nother story from my standpoint. When I think about how I've effectively monetized nuggets, oftentimes most of the ways people have paid me to help them grow their businesses or use my insights have often all come from establishing core relationships with executives inside of a business and helping them solve a problem they don't have the time to solve themselves, right? And in that instance, it gives me the opportunity to lean on my Rolodex of nuggets that come from an entrepreneurship program that I'm part of, as an example, or the books that I'm currently reading, or the articles that I'm currently engaging with, or one customer leading into another. So, one of the nuggets that oftentimes I bring to young businesses that are trying to scale is really the concept that's nothing new, to be fair, work-life harmony, right? Oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, we have been shoved this perspective that to build something worth building, you need to work 16 hours a day, right? If you're not working 16 hours a day, you're not doing it enough. And I am a culprit of that. I have lived that life. I have pushed that life onto employees, and I've realized it's wrong. It's not the best way of doing it because we try to work in this concept of balance now, right? 50% this and 50% there. And I want to throw that out the window and replace that with this concept of harmony, work-life harmony. Because as I'm sitting with you, Will, I live and I'm based in Scotland. It's 9 p.m. for me. And if I had work harmony or work-life balance, my wife would be down here saying, "Why are you on a call? Why are you doing this, etc." But I understand the value of this relationship and this conversation. She understands that. And you take advantage of these opportunities as they present themselves
mhm.
so that you can move yourself forward, move your business forward, move your brand forward. And so for me, one of the big nuggets that I continue to push down into teams, whether that's at large corporations or small ones, is work-life harmony. And how do we take advantage of tools, technology, processes in order to facilitate that engagement that gives us longevity from employees, a better work-life experience between you and your own family? Because what we sit here and talk about all the time is work. It's the first thing we ask people when we meet them. What do you do? And oftentimes it's not about what we do, it's about the people that we are and who we do it for, which is our loved ones. And so that's probably the biggest nugget I found myself bringing back into the work conversation because I think it gets overwritten quite often in our world.
Totally agree. Okay, here's just a little bit here. Imagine you're in a coffee shop with a friend who's just gotten started on Amazon. He's
Mm.
doing a couple $1,000s a month. Which of the following areas do you think you might have some advice for him about? Product launch, reviews, product listings, or advertising, or all of the above?
Probably I'd have an opinion on all of the above, but I'd probably bucket myself down into probably listing and advertising. That's probably where I've spent the majority of my time in terms of hands-on keyboard work as well as consulting are those two.
Beautiful. So, looking down at the product listings and advertising, there's a couple of questions that we're seeing come from our listeners,
Sure.
from our users. And one of them is in 2024, what can I do to actually like what are some basic things I should be doing on my listings to make my ads more effective?
So we all know a lot of the basics around Amazon SEO and what you're trying to do there. But when I think about 2024 and where you're going to start to win is spending the time and the effort to be meticulous in setting up a detail page, right? Obviously, there's a lot of tools out there in the world that we all know and love that allow for us to do SEO and keyword research, those types of pieces. But when I see Amazon as a retailer using the different inputs that exist within a flat file or in the UI, tend to just focus on generic terms, title optimization, and bullet points. That's what everyone wants to talk about. But a lot of the search functionality, the way that Amazon buckets and organizes your products, compares it with other products, lives in a lot of the other attributes and data that exist behind what's going on inside of a product detail page. And then there's the aspect of A plus content and brand stories. They've always had a lot of value, to be completely fair. But now we have this opportunity to really push and engage deeper level content beyond just your basics of image optimization, SEO, titles, and bullet points. And so my feedback from a product listing standpoint is really twofold. One, pay attention to the details. I don't think there's been enough analysis and work around how all of the attribute fields that exist within a particular category really
Mm.
affect the overall sales ranking and search ranking for a product listing. And then the second thing is I've heard about mobile optimization and people optimizing it for mobile, but now that we live in a world that is really focused on bite-sized content,
Mm.
particularly video content, take advantage of it, right? If you have a listing that does not have video content on it, that's a miss, in my opinion. And so when you think about how video now plays a nuanced role, but a substantial role in the world of Amazon, right? Let alone other platforms where you can run video on. I have an intrinsic belief that video has a lot of power and will continue to only carry more.
So in that situation with a got a listing video, imagining that we're in that coffee shop and your friend turns to you, is like, I knew nothing about video. At
Yeah.
that point, what does he do?
You know what? There's a lot of options
We're
these
going back to
days,
the go
right?
figure it out thing, right?
Yeah, the go figure it out page, right? It's like, hey, let's go figure it out. The thing is, I want to say, hey, it costs a lot of money to do these things, right? But dude, there have been South by South independent filmmakers that have literally shot on an iPhone 14 camera, right? Award-winning short films have been shot on an iPhone 14 camera. Okay. Not kid ourselves. There's always the opportunity to look at things, to engage in what a storyboard is, right? Find content online that help you figure out how to do some of these shots. You don't need to be an editor.
Probably go Google how to make a product video on Amazon
Is possible. But like this becomes part of how scrappy you want to be, right? Some people, I've worked with a lot of brands that are extremely well funded at early stages, right? We're talking can spend a lot of money on advertising from day one,
mm-hmm.
optimize listings, launch a lot of products. And that is a great place to be in, right? When you shoot video, it can be expensive. You can make it really expensive if you want to, but you can also make it extremely scrappy, right? I literally just helped a brand who sells elbow pads, right? They sell elbow pads on Amazon, right? And we shot a recent video. They borrowed a WeWork office from a friend. They hired a buddy for a couple $100 and a bucket of beer to help them shoot some content. And one of the owners went and participated in it. It's not groundbreaking, right? But it gives me three things now, okay? And with their brand, it gives me the ability to take this 10-minute reel, whatever they build, and this I think is the trick, okay? Not go in shooting video for a 30-second clip. Don't go that. Go and shoot 5 minutes. Go shoot 10 minutes. Get all your B-roll. Get all the product images. Get all the shots that you're looking for, right? You want to give yourself the opportunity to create magic, right? You're not going to get it the day of, okay? Is valuable. And that's where you go find somebody on Fiverr. You find somebody on Upwork. You hire an intern college kid. We literally built channel bakers off of interns in the early days, right? And it was awesome because they learned, everyone grew. And so when you think about where do I go and do this? always start with long form content that you can then
Mm,
whittle down because it's easier to give an editor or somebody in that space a lot of content and say, hey, cut me a 30 and this is the feel I'm looking for. And this is what I want. This is a 60. And then here's a minute 30 or a longer form because now I can do connected TV placements. I can do sponsor brands video. I can get it on my detail page. I can put it a lot of places. And that one piece of content that you shot, 10 minutes now can
love it.
become a myriad of other small pieces of content that then can go exist on social and exist on Google and exist on TikTok that allows you to actually build a brand. And so it's not insurmountable, right? And that's part of it is like, why not have these tools? But that becomes the skill, right? You didn't know it today, but you'll know
Yeah,
more about it tomorrow. You
I
just have
love
to
it.
do the work.
I love it. Okay, rapid fire question on advertising. This guy's got a product that has 0 reviews. Should he be advertising on that product?
No,
Why?
not worth it. Not on Amazon. Okay. It's you're setting yourself up for failure, right? When we don't have reviews. We are in a society that values opinions, right? We value what other people say. We make decisions off of what people we trust say. When we advertise a product with no reviews, we're asking for somebody to make a very big commitment to try something, to be the first adopter of X thing.
Yeah.
That's a hard ask when you don't know who you're targeting, right? If you don't have somebody that's left you a review who hasn't really purchased your review and you're trying to advertise that product, you're going up against a lot of other products that are going to be better than yours. Guaranteed,
Mm,
95% of the products you're probably going to advertise against have sales, have reviews. It's not too hard to start to find and try to filter out how you get reviews, whether that's requesting reviews through Amazon and doing it the good old fashioned way, seeding product and doing that, or beg and borrowing some friends who might be able to help you out to a
right.
degree.
Right. Get
You know,
get two
so
or three friends to go order your product and
listen, there is a
get a review.
thing called kickstarting the flywheel, right? If you want to know more about it, go read some books by Jim Collins, right? But in that instance, like, is value in and trust built into a review. It's not just about having the review.
Love it.
It's about having a good review. It's about
Love it.
having an honest review.
Love it.
So no, don't waste your money.
All right. Final question for the episode. Well, there's two more. You
Okay.
could make a phone call back to yourself. We're gonna make a phone call back to that young dude who just wrote that. You just wrote that song. He hasn't even gotten offered the job yet at Apple. You could make a phone call
Mm,
back to him, and
mm.
we're gonna assume that he's mature enough to receive whatever advice you were willing to give him. I asked this question once without that, and they were like, "There's no point. I was not mature enough to receive any advice." So
Good
we're going to
feedback.
assume that this individual is mature enough to receive the advice that you're willing to give. What piece of advice would you give to him to level upskill his ability to monetize mental capital?
There is a lot that could be said, but filtering it down to one thing, I'd probably tell myself to risk more. When
Okay.
we're young, the consequences of our actions are smaller, right? You steal a cookie from your mom, you're not going to jail, right? You're
Well,
going to get a
maybe
slap
not
on the
like
wrist.
real
No,
jail, but
not
you're
maybe
gonna
not
go
like,
to your room for
yeah,
the next 10 years.
yeah, most likely. But I look back at my life and I've done a lot. I've done some pretty cool things in my life, but I always look back and I see opportunity that I was either too scared or too fast to take advantage of it, right?
Wait,
And
so did you
so
say too scared or too fast?
too scared or too fast, meaning I made a decision to move on without giving it enough thought, number
Ah,
one. Or two, too scared being like, oh, I'm not capable. I don't have the skill for that. I don't, etc. And when I look back, I would probably tell myself to risk more, right? To say yes more often. Granted, I would have gotten beat up a couple of times, gotten punched in the face a couple of times.
literally
And to be
and
fair,
figuratively, probably.
yeah, figuratively, financially, right? Like all of those things would have happened, but all of them would be at a lower net cost to me than if I was to do those same things today, right? And so when I think about the big bets that I'm making right now, they cost more money, they cost more time, they cost more effort, they have the bigger propensity to fail. but you can cut your teeth early on smaller things that come your way. And the more often you fail, the more you learn, the more tools you add to your toolbox. So I'd probably tell myself to risk more.
I love that. All right, final question. And this one really is the final question. Any tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year that have helped you
Hmm.
upskill your mental capital?
AI is a huge conversation right now, and I am just hitting the iceberg behind it. Um, but I am intrigued every day at what I can turn around using LL, like large language models, ChatGPT, exploring. I'm currently exploring more tools behind that because currently I'm building a business that's focused. It's actually a marketplace for farmers in the US. I'm bringing all that I've learned in consumer electronics, Amazon, et cetera, and I'm taking those skills and I'm helping farmers and agriculture bring their products to consumers. And as I'm building that, we're building it scrappy. We're bootstrapping this thing. And every day I'm learning something new and I'm exploring more and more how AI can be a time saver, a spot check, a value add to get a product or an idea to 80% as we then refine it through expert consulting, people that we borrow favors from, et cetera. So I am hyper focused on how I use those tools right now. That would be one thing that I'll throw out you guys. And then secondarily, I've rediscovered time to read more. I work a lot. There's a lot that happens in my day, lots of screens.
Mm-hmm.
So to go analog and start reading a book has been getting back into that space has been a blessing for me because it's allowed for me to disconnect. So what I've started to do interchange between a fiction book that has nothing to do with anything, right? And then a business book. So recently, in that fiction book, what I found it does for me is the ability to shut my mind off from the business problems and the things that I'm doing. A, it gives me better sleep, and B, actually gives my brain time and space to explore the issues that I'm running into. And 9 times out of 10, I'm waking up, writing in my notebook next to my bed the next idea and the thing that I need to tackle the next day. That's one thing. Book wise, that I want to push. I love the author Jim Collins. It's a dream of mine to co-author a book with that guy at some point in time. And I'm
I'd read
diving
that
deeper into
book.
his work. Huh?
Read that book.
Yeah, man. We'll see about it. I'm one step removed from the guy. I know his brother. So
Ah,
maybe
there
that'll
you
work out
go.
sometime. But I just picked up what was the book? 2.0. It was his book BE 2.0, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. So that was a re-release. And so I'm currently getting that one started right now. But Good to Great, Built to Last, those are two of the books that I come back to probably on an annual basis to do that. And then one last thing I'll leave with your readers or with your listeners is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard about that one. I have not read it, but I've heard about it.
I will say it is a book that gives you license to choose better for yourself. And I think in the world of monetizing your mental capital, it's important to know what to say yes to as it aligns with your passions and what you actually care about. Because if you start saying yes to the things that are tertiary to who you are as an individual and what you are realistically able to give back in value to your clients and to your customers, you spread yourself thin, you pretend to be something you're not because you don't have enough clarity on who you are, right? And so that book as a whole, I think for me has consistently over the last decade brought me clarity every couple of years as I've read it, to better understand how to go about doing something. Because what we have is this, right? I'll give you one last thing. This methodology, right? Our thoughts towards create action, right? And from a
Mm-hmm.
business context, right? Oftentimes we're looking for clarity. What should I do? When we don't have clarity, it's really hard to get to the next step with this, which is strategy,
Right.
right? How do I go and do it? And then we get
Mm-hmm.
to this next stage, which is action. Now that I know what I want and how to do it, let me go do it, right? And oftentimes we get stuck in this cycle where we can't get from one stage to another. So this piece of clarity continues to come back to me as I do different businesses and different projects. But the last piece is like, with that clarity, sometimes what we need to do is just do stuff, go backwards a step. So
Go
instead of going
backwards a
from
step.
clarity to strategy to action, and then back to clarity again because it's a cycle. We go from clarity and we go backwards. Just go do something you care about, do something you're passionate about, do something that intrigues you, which will then help you better whittle down the things you should be saying no to so that you can get closer to what you might be able to say yes to. So when I think about how I operate these days, oftentimes look for clarity so that I can get to these next stages. And some of those books I've mentioned really do help.
I love it. All right, that wraps our episode for monetizing your mental capital. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us.